This is my buddy's daughter's Can-Am DS90 quad, and it's broken. Today, we're gonna try and fix it. So this little DS90 Bombardier quad, it's a two-wheel drive. It was sitting all winter with a battery tender on it, and my buddy said that he thinks it seized. The engine seized, and so we were trying to figure out, like, well, how would the engine seize from sitting overnight? So I convinced him to let me take it. So me and Link, say hi, Link. Hello. So we could make a video and how to kind of figure out what's wrong with this thing. So the only thing we can think of right off the top of our heads is, I wonder if the carburetor, if the gas was left on. I don't even know if we can turn the gas off. Yeah, gas is left on. If the carburetor leaked down into the cylinder and the thing is hydrolocked because the crankcase and the cylinder are full of gas and oil. Anyway, electric start doesn't seem to be working. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pop the seat off. So there's a little tab underneath the back here. Right here underneath. Can you see that there, Link? Can you show the people where the tab is? Right here. So you pull that tab and the seat pops off. So we'll just set this out of the way so we don't step on it. And I'm going to grab here's the battery. Okay, so obviously there's a cover on it, and this is for the battery tender. So we're going to grab my multimeter, put it to voltage, and we'll just test to see what we have for voltage on this battery. Should work using the battery tester plug. Maybe. That shows nothing. Well, maybe I got the... Oh, yeah. If it helps if you put your voltmeter on volts DC. Okay, that's still showing nothing. It should work in either direction, unless there's like a diode in the connector here, because a diode for electrical is like a check valve or one way. So we're going to pop the battery cover off and then we'll just test it again. What a pain in the ass this thing is. Oh, okay. So here's our two battery terminals. We'll test it again, see what we got here. Aha, there we go. So I was right. There is a diode in that connector for the charger, and this was just showing 8 volts. So the battery is dead. Looks like it's going to kind of be in the way, so maybe we'll hook up the battery charger after. But we do have a Kickstarter, so we'll keep going and we'll talk about what we're doing each step of the way here. Hey guys, here's a quick tip or trick for you: is save your dishwasher pod containers, throw the lid away, and now this is a fantastic little bucket or pail, so you're not kicking screws and parts all across the shop floor when you're trying to work on stuff. You can set it down on the running board, on the back, on the floor, and you always know where your stuff is at. All right, so if we suspect that the crankcase and the cylinder are full of gas and oil, I'm going to pull the oil dipstick here. And I've got a drain pan underneath just in case, but if this thing starts puking out everywhere, that's probably why it might be locked up. Oh, okay, it's not. Well, that sucks. Actually, I don't even see any oil on it. All right, well, next step is we're going to pull the spark plug, and then we will see if we can kick it over. So spark plug right here, and we'll try and pull that and kick it over. Let me grab some tools. Geez, that sure wasn't very tight. That's okay. I don't know why this thing would be locked up or seized from just sitting over the winter. Nice and dry. It's a little black. He did say that it was running rich, so no matter what we do here today, we're also going to take the carburetor out, which I think is going to involve removing all the plastics, and we're going to just go through the carburetor and we'll try and clean it up and see if we can make it work better. Well, it's definitely not seized because we're kicking it over. Link, I'm going to kick it over again. Can you put your finger over the spark plug hole and make sure there's air pressure coming out? Ready? Yep. Yeah, okay. Well, that's all right. I guess our next step is we're just going to tear the plastic off, give us more room to work. Then we'll check for spark, and we'll take the carburetor out, make sure it's all cleaned up and all the jets and orifices are good. And then we'll try and put it back together and see if we can't get it to fire up. We got to take the battery out, so we'll start with the negative clamp. Always do the negative clamp first, guys. Always. So then that one's out. So now, if we touch the positive and anything else underneath the quad here that could possibly ground it out, we're not going to create any sparks or anything. So we got those two out. That's the battery tender. Oh, and I just dropped the screw. Okay, we'll get that later. But I'm going to take these out, and I'm just going to take the battery right out. While we get the battery out, we might as well just throw it on the charger. That way it's going to charge up while we're doing all this work. All right, there's 2 screws here, 2 screws here, 2 screws here, and 2 screws here, and then the whole back half should come off. Forgot to mention another thing we're going to do when we're all done with this quad is we're going to wash it because it's dirty. Make sure that that little girl that this quad is for is going to have a nice clean machine, nice clean ride. Okay, so now this should be free. Oh, okay. Looks like it's caught kind of under the tank. All right, guys, I kind of thought that might happen. We're going to take the front end off first now so that we can get that off before we take the back end off. Give us a minute. I got to look at this and figure it out before we carry on with the video.
There's 2 screws on this fender, 2 screws on this fender, screws under here, and there's 2 screws right here that we need to take off. And we also have to take off this cover.
And the gas cap.
That too.
So here, Link, take this impact and take the cover off the steering or the handlebars here. Now the wiring might just fold out of the way, but we're not going to take the gas cap off just yet because we don't want any dirt and junk to fall in there until we're ready to take it off. Go ahead, bud. Now how does this pop off there? Oh, perfect. Exactly like I thought. So either we can unplug these or we'll see if we can fit them through the hole once we kind of lift the whole thing off, because there's quite a bit of slack. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. There's quite a bit of slack in these wires. So, okay, we'll carry on. Those two, now there should be, this is hard to see, you guys. It's kind of right behind the headlight here. And there's a bracket. We got that one off. There's one down here too. Can you see that one, Link? That one's a tough one to get to as well. Come to the side and you'll see it, buddy. And then I'll just grab these ones on this side. It should be ready to come right off. This one right here on this headlight, guys, it's broken. So, is there more brackets? I don't know. We'll get back to you guys in a second here. We got to look at this a little more. So sneaky buggers, there's a screw right in here attaching these two panels together. So we kind of just took the gas cap off so we could lift it out a little ways and get my impact driver in here. Oh, come on. Where the heck is that? There we go. Nope. There we go. I thought. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, here we go. Got it this time for sure. There. Now this should just pop right off. There we go. And this one should come right out. So I'm going to take this back one off first. Just like that. And now this front one, we're going to try to snake around the handlebars. Crap. I don't know if that's going to work because we might have to take the handlebars off. All right, Link, cut. All right, so we made a mistake. We're not going to take the handlebars all apart to get this plastic off because there's just a tank here and the carburetor is kind of down here under the side. You can see it from that side too, Link, I think. So we're just going to take some of the plastic shrouds and stuff off of the sides here, see if we can get to the carburetor that way. And we'll try and remove the carburetor out and then we'll clean it out. So I think we just remove this shroud. We should have access to the carburetor. Yep, there it is. All right, so Link had to run in the house to take care of some paperwork. And while he was gone, I took this plastic cover off for the fuel petcock with the handle and the air box with the air filter, wherever it is, under my stool here. Here's the air filter. So to get the carburetor out, show the people here, Lincoln, there's this like metal plate that's bolted to the engine and then bolted to the carburetor on both sides. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take out, looks like there's 2 screws here to take the air box out. And we'll get that completely out of the way because it's the rubber boot goes onto the carburetor back here. We'll get that completely out of the way and then we'll go to take the carburetor off. But before you do, it's a good idea to pay attention where all the drain lines go from the carburetor for draining the float bowl or the overflow tube or anything else. Like this one, for instance, this one off of the air box, which just kind of hangs down in the back. But we want to pay attention to where that goes. I think this one is a crankcase breather. Just slides out. So, it's a good idea to pay attention to where all this stuff goes. So we're going to take this off and then we'll carry on. Oh, look, I think this just slides up the side here too. Whatever, if we take the airbox out, we'll just take that with it. So here you guys can see I'm taking out the one screw for the airbox. Remember, if you don't know how to put this all back together, don't take it all apart. Take it to a qualified mechanic or a shop. We're pretty good at this stuff, so we'll just wing it. Okay, so I got the other screw out. There it is. And now I just got to undo this airbox. So the rubber boot from the airbox goes right to the carburetor. So there's a clamp here. So we'll take the clamp and back it off most of the way. And now this airbox should just pop off of the carburetor. It should just pop off the carburetor, I said. Come on. Okay, the clamp is, you can feel the screw on the back. The clamp's all the way out. So this is just a stuck rubber boot on the carburetor. Work it with your fingers and it'll crack loose and come off. Okay, take 5. All right, we got that airbox all disconnected and the boot off. So go ahead, Link, pull it out. You're gonna have to thread that rubber boot through some of those hoses and stuff that are inside and the cables and everything in here. There you go. Now kind of twist it around, buddy. You're caught there, Link. You're caught right there. There you go. Okay. Bob's your uncle. It's out.
Yep.
Okay, guys, so we got an 8mm bolt here, and then there's 2 on the throat of the carb that attach it to the engine. So we're going to take those off, and then this metal bracket will stop holding it. We're going to take these screws off to remove the throttle cable, and then we're going to look at the fuel lines and stuff. So there's fuel lines, and I think there's, like I was saying earlier, the overflow and maybe the drain line. Not sure 100%. We'll know more when we can actually move the carb and see what we're doing to get it out of there. My fancy new snap-on ratchet. Got that from a friend of mine for my birthday. Very nice of him. So, well, why is that being a bugger? There we go. So you can see here, there's a little square nut right there. You got to be careful when you pull the carburetor, because that'll come flying out and then you might lose it forever. So I got to wheel to the other side, grab this other one. We'll come back to you guys in a minute when we're ready to pull some more parts off the carb. All right, so we got the carburetor all disconnected from the engine and that metal bracket. So now I'm taking the throttle cable off, and I'm hoping we can take it off in a whole assembly here. If not, then we'll just disconnect it. Yeah, no, I was wrong. I made a mistake. Cut. I said cut. Okay, so this one here is this little cable holder. So we're going to take that off, guys. Now here's the throttle cable. And we can take the throttle cable and just slide it out of its home if we can. Get it up and around. There we go. So now the throttle cable is disconnected from the carburetor. We got the vent lines disconnected from the other side as well. Uh-oh, there's something else holding it. Oh, this. Okay, this thing's really starting to piss me off. I'm not liking this engine at all. I think we might actually have to take this little snout off the engine to get the carburetor out properly. All right, so we got the carburetor mostly out, but the fuel line's in the way, and because it's such a tight space in there, I'm actually going to take it off of the fuel valve, the petcock for off the tank. So just move this spring clamp back, and if you grab the hose gently and kind of work it back and forth, that's a great way to break it loose. And now it should just slide right off of there. There we go. Now we can take the carburetor out the other side. Again, remember the routing of the hoses and stuff, guys. I think the only thing that's left holding us in is on the top here of the carburetor. Oh, I see. There we go. What a pain this thing is. This metal bracket and everything with it. This is such a shitty design. Give your head a shake, BRP. This sucks. Because I don't even know how to get this all apart. And then how do we get the float bowl out? And what a pain in the ass. Okay, Link, cut there. We got to reevaluate and see what we're doing. Well, guys, this thing is such a piece of crap. Bombardier or Can-Am or whoever you want to call it has one of the worst friggin' designs I've ever seen in my life. With this metal bracket around the carburetor, you cannot take the slider out of the top. You cannot take the float bowl off the bottom. You cannot take this piece off the engine. You cannot take the fuel line off. You can't take anything apart on this stupid carburetor. So now if our jets are plugged up, or if we have junk in there, or the float itself is stuck, are you buying a whole new carburetor? And the amount of work it is to take this apart is just insane. So we just said, you know what? we're taking this throttle apart so we can take the throttle cable and we can just slide the whole carb out that way. And then we'll go to the workbench and see what we can come up with. I might end up drilling out those rivets, and that way we can actually take the carb apart. This is nuts. This is just nuts. So there's your cover for your throttle cable assembly, and it should just pop out here like this, if I can. See, the trick is you got to pop that out straight and square. Where did those needle nose pliers go? Here we go. So you got to try and pop that out straight and square. There we go. So now our throttle cable's out of the throttle, the thumb throttle here. So now I'm going to actually take this all the way through and take the carb out to the bench. Okay, so we tried drilling all these rivet heads off to get this plate out, and the ground strap came off, so we were able to bring this whole thing out. But like, this is what I was talking about, you guys. This cap with the slide, you can't get that out. The screws for the float bowl, they're like, you can't get to those. Like, this is insane. So it's my buddy's quad, not my quad, but I'm gonna pop these rivets out so we can take this plate off, and then we can actually get to the carburetor. And if he's okay with it, I'm not gonna put this plate back on the top, because I don't really see what purpose it serves. I don't know. I don't know why it's there. I don't like it. It's a pain in the ass. Okay guys, so we got the metal brackets off. Look at this, we have full access to the carburetor. Yay. So we're gonna pull the slide out. We're gonna pull the bowl off. We're gonna pull these other two hoses off so that they're not in the way. And then we're gonna clean all the jets, and then we're gonna check the carb settings. So if you want, you can follow along. Again, I hope everybody realizes that when you do this, you just go back the exact way that it came off. But Lincoln, pay attention. Remember, this came off that way, okay? So that's the way direction we want that hose to go back on. This one was hanging straight down. Oh man, look at this tiny little clamp in there. What a pain. Like, come on, BRP, use some good stuff. Why give us this junk to deal with? Oh, actually, you know what? I don't think BRP wanted us to take this carburetor apart anyway. The amount of BS we had to just deal with. So here's where we take our slide out. This should have your needle in there, guys. And this is kind of your needle and adjustment. Yeah, see, there's your needle. It goes down to your main jet inside. And this needle should have some clips and stuff on it for adjusting the position for whether it needs more gas or less gas. Okay, so there's those. We're leaking gas. You guys notice I got the blue paper towel here? The blue paper towel is because the workbench isn't always the cleanest, so you can see. But having the blue paper towel means I'm not picking up dirt and metal flakes off of the bench. Just gonna grab a screwdriver to pull that bowl off. This will work. I'm surprised there's only 2 screws holding this float bowl on. I mean, I've seen 3, but never 2. Quite often it's usually 4. So if you guys are ever working on small carburetors, they're really easy. They're very simple. It's not difficult. Once you've done one, you can pretty much do them all. Okay, so there's the float bowl. Ah, look at that. There is some dirt and junk in there. So this is your overflow tube. So once the gas gets up to that overflow tube, it'll go out. But then this is your drain. So there's a little hole down in there. And when you back that valve open, you can drain the float bowl. This is your float. So your main gas connects to here, and there's a little needle right down here. So as the float drops down, it lets more gas in. And once the float kind of lifts up, it cuts the gas off. This is your main jet. This is your pilot jet. So your pilot jet will give you idle to roughly a quarter throttle, and then your main jet takes over. So you remember this slide here with the needle actually blocks off the main jet, and it's tapered. So as it slides up, it lets more fuel in. The way it lets more fuel in is this is the Venturi effect. So you can see it's wide here, gets very skinny, and then opens up again. So it creates a low pressure section just after where the jet comes into the throat, and that will suck the fuel in based on airflow. That's how a carburetor works. This one here, can you guys see there's where this lines up, there's a brass pin in there. That's your idle screw. So that's what holds the slide up. And if it holds the slide up, it lets a little bit more air and a little more fuel in just for idle itself. And then this one here, I believe, should be your low. Okay, hang on, let me think about this. It's on the opposite side. I believe this is your fuel screw. If it was back here, it would be your air screw. And so usually these ones are set from factory. So anyway, we're going to take this all apart and clean it all up. Make sure all of the needles clean, the jets are clean, and then we'll put it all back together. So this is how you take your float off. Now, see that tab? There's a spring there. It holds your needle. You want to kind of remember which way that went on. So those little loops are facing the hinge. Okay, so the float. Check the float. Okay, so if it had a hole in it or something, it would fill up with liquid and it would stay down and would flood the engine. The needle is very clean. I know my hands aren't very clean. That's not good. And then where the needle seats for your gas inlet, that's pretty clean. So another good thing to do, guys, is we're going to take these jets out. And then once we take the jets out, we're going to blow through them and clean them, make sure that, hold them up to the light, make sure they look good. And then we're going to take the air hose and we're going to blow through every single little tube and orifice we can in the entire carb. Oh, see, that's taking the whole needle seat and everything out. That's okay. So you blow through that, and I can look up to the light, and it's perfectly clean and clear. So if you get junk in your jets, you'll see like buildup and crud inside there, and it won't be a nice round uniform hole. That one is very clean and clear, so that one's good. This one could be part of the problem though. This is your pilot jet right here, and if your pilot jet is dirty, it's not going to idle, and then when you go to like give it a little bit of throttle to get going and get moving, it'll usually kind of pop and fart and snap. And this is quite often the problem on these small engines. Yeah, look at that. She's plugged right up solid, guys. So I think this is the problem as to why it wasn't running properly and why it was rough or hard to start. So I'll blow through this with some air. I have a torch tip cleaner, or I have a sewing needle, or if I can't clean it out at all, then we end up buying a new one. They're pretty cheap. I might actually have a spare one of these. So there's that. There's some junk in here. So we'll blow this all out and clean it all up with the air. Make sure everything's good. And we'll put it all back together. Okay, so we put the carburetor all back together. We cleaned the jets and where the needle, the valve for the fuel flow, whatever you want to call it, cleaned all that out. We blew through every single orifice and line on this thing. We cleaned out the float bowl. We're just putting this back together in the same orientation that we took it all apart. And then we're going to reinstall it back into the quad. So this carb is all cleaned up. There was quite a bit of junk in the pilot carb, which is for idle and off idle, up to about a quarter throttle. So we're pretty confident that we got this issue resolved. It's going to be a bit to put this thing back together because of the stupid design that they have. But once we get it all back together, I'm pretty confident me and Link will get this thing fired up and running real good for that girl. All right, guys, well, we were investigating as we put the carburetor back in. You can see we didn't put that top bracket back on, but it looks like this is your choke here, okay? And so if I operate the choke from the handlebar, keep the video on here, Link, see how it pivots properly, right? Well, there was a screw in here that was holding it, and the screw, when it was done up tightly, watch this, it doesn't go back until I let go of this. So I think what the problem here is that there's missing a washer behind the bracket. So we're going to put a washer back behind the bracket, and then we're going to put this bracket back on. And that should solve that problem. I think that's part of the reason why it wasn't running right, is because the choke was stuck on. The choke wasn't moving freely. So anyway, just thought we'd share that. There we go. We put a washer behind that bolt with this bracket. Now look at the choke on and off like it's supposed to. Okay, so me and Link, we're pretty confident in our abilities that we've got the carburetor all cleaned up and everything should be running fine on it. So we're gonna put this thing all back together. We're gonna set up a time lapse so you guys can follow along. It's exactly how we do everything else around here. You just put it back together the same way that it came apart. So we'll do that. And then we'll come back to you guys after the time lapse and show you a couple little maintenance items that we're gonna do, and we'll take care of that. So follow along. All right, so we got it all back together and we got the battery back in. Oh, I think we've got to adjust this again though, Link. Anyway, so now we're going to check for spark. So come over here and you can see that we have the spark plug out. I'm going to turn the ignition on and we're going to hit the start button and see what happens. Oh, hang on. Why is it not? And there's spark. Okay. So we'll turn that off. We'll put the spark plug back in, turn the gas on, and see if we can't get this puppy to fire up. Okay, guys, spark plug's in. Moment of truth. Let's see if this thing will run. Woohoo! We got it. Oh, it's a little cold yet. All right, we did it. Job well done.
So now that this thing is running and fired up, we're going to check the oil, check the tire pressures, check chain tension, check lube the chain, and we're also going to give it a quick wash.